When Doge starts pulling these strings, there's a certain group of people who emerge like prairie dogs. Boop, the little heads pop up to complain. Those are the deep state operatives. Now, maybe there'll be some exceptions, but I think you're going to find out the entire architecture of the bad guys, because they're the ones who are going to start fighting this the hardest. As Elon Musk said on X, he said, one lesson I remember from the PayPal days, he said, do you know who complained the loudest? The fraudsters. There would be immediate over-the-top indignation from the fraudsters. Normal people will say, quote, I think there's something wrong. But fraudsters will come hot out the gate with fake outrage. Fraudster, fake outrage. We're looking at a rapid growth of oligarchy. We're looking at a rapid growth of authoritarianism. And I fear that we're looking at a rapid growth of kleptocracy as well. That feels like coming out of the gate hot with fake outrage.
Elon Musk, you didn't create U.S. aid. The United States Congress did for the American people. And just like Elon Musk did not create U.S. aid, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him. Elon Musk, you may have illegally seized power over the financial payment systems of the United States Department of Treasury, but you don't control the money of the American people. The United States Congress does that under Article 1 of the Constitution.
So it looks like Scott Adams was right, that in fact, all of the deep state actors are showing themselves. Jamie Raskin immediately sprints to a microphone. What are you doing with USAID? What do you think you run our budget here? That's my job. Oh, Congress who doesn't seem to care about ever balancing a budget, doesn't seem to care about ever declaring war or even having a vote on it or a debate on it. They're totally happy. They're thrilled, in fact, to give away their powers to the executive branch 24/7, but not when Donald Trump's in charge. No. Not when Elon Musk has Doge breathing down their neck. And that's where we're at. That's what's happening. USAID, if not the head of the snake, is one of the hydras, one of the major hydras. And in my opinion, what it represents is the funding mechanism for the neoliberal world order, which they have talked about ad nauseum over the past couple of years, ever since Russia decided to invade Ukraine, which I might add was a direct response to USAID's operations inside of Ukraine in 2014 and prior and after. But you get the idea. Anyways, I think that this is a truly revelatory moment. I think that this is really, really important for people to be paying attention to who gets the most outraged. People don't know this, but AOC was actually plucked out of obscurity and backed by a conduit or a subsidiary of USAID to get her into Congress in the first place. So needless to say, she loves USAID. So does Chuck Schumer. So does Hillary Clinton. So does Victoria Nuland. So does Chuck Schumer. All of them. All of the normal actors that you would expect to love USAID do. And that's why you should be opposed to it. And also, he lied there. He said that this was created by Congress. Well, kind of. It was created by Congress in the sense that they then instructed the president to create something to handle foreign aid. But what happened was in 1961, JFK created via executive order the actual parameters for USAID, which means that Donald Trump via executive order can modify that dramatically, if not rescind it entirely, which is what I would hope he would do, as opposed to funneling it off under the State Department, in which case Marco Rubio is then in charge of it. So not a perfect solution, but it is a step in the right direction. Today I have on Jeremy Kauffman, the legend, the psycho from New Hampshire, the Free State Project. He's great. We go into some of this. We go really deep on it, but we talk just about Trump's first 2 weeks and what we're thinking about everything, where it's headed, if what we should be supporting, criticizing, et cetera, et cetera. It's a good conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you can believe it, the legends over at MyPillow decided to sponsor Liberty Lockdown. I know, I can't believe it either, but this is real. If you guys want to pick up any of the best pillows around, blankets, slippers, they got a whole litany of awesome items. You now have the ability to do so, and you can support the show. Go to mypillow.com/lockdown and use code lockdown to get a discount. It's also, if you want to, you can use the phone I know people still use phones nowadays sometimes. 1-800-803-0339. You can call and place an order, or go to mypillow.com/lockdown. Check it out. They've got incredible items. I am thrilled with what I've gotten so far from them, and I think you guys will enjoy it. They have a lot more than just pillows. mypillow.com/lockdown. Check it out.
When did you first learn that President Trump intends to increase tariffs if Canada retaliates, and how has that changed your strategy?
I think Canadians understand that we need to respond to this. We need to respond in a way that is appropriate, that is measured but forceful, and that meets the moment. We're certainly not looking to escalate, but we will stand up for Canada, for Canadians, for Canadian jobs.
I'm joined today by Jeremy Kaufman. He is the Free State vigilante himself. So I haven't had you on in a bit, and the news cycle has been blistering. We are in a full-fledged trade war with the world at this point, as best I can tell. Canada and Mexico being the latest two, as well as the Panama Canal. Obviously, Trump won the White House. We've got everything under the sun and more. What are your thoughts, first off? I mean, just on the state of the world.
Everything is, well, I can't tell. So actually, this is I wanted to talk to you about this, and it's annoying to come on and not and be like, I don't know the answer. Like, that's such a boring answer. But they screeched so much about Trump 2016 to 2020 when, from my perspective, he did very little, right? And so I wasn't sure what to expect. Is Trump going to do real stuff?
Same.
And so there's all this screeching. Some of it's clearly real. Like, I never would have thought he was going to end USAID. Like, that's amazing. But I can't tell yet how much is real. There's a ton of screeching, which is encouraging. But some of this was going to happen no matter what. And so I can't tell, some of the radical stuff that Trump and Vivek and Elon were talking about. Is it going to happen or not? I want to kind of wait and see if it's going to happen for real. But the early signs are encouraging.
Yeah, I think it is happening. I mean, you have there's an announcement that the FBI is going to be protesting today. The FBI agents will be protesting. I think
with or without the Patriot Front masks.
They'll actually be protesting as themselves today. But I think with anticipation of Kash Patel's confirmation hearings set for tomorrow, I think the USAID stuff is major. I think getting rid of all of the DEI stuff from the federal departments is major. I think that obviously, even though it's not the perfect fix, but it's something. The ceasefire in Gaza has been major, and then I think Trump is very seriously engaged with conversations with Putin to try to end the Ukraine war. Basically, what I'm saying is, Jeremy, I think that Trump has done almost everything, good and bad, that he has promised in the first 10 days of his second term. I mean, whatever he can do via executive order, he has done. It's remarkable.
Totally, he's totally exceeding 2016 to 2020. But you got to remember, Clint, I'm a libertarian. That means I'm never happy, right? So I'm
same here.
just okay. And I'm not. I guess if anything, it makes for entertaining conversation. So I'll play guy against Trump. But I want to be clear. I think Trump's done more already than I expected, exceeding what he did in the first 4 years. Like, there's a lot to like. But to me, there are fundamental things. Like, okay, Trump fixed shower heads. The fundamental problem here is we have a law that says the government gets to control how many gallons per minute flow through your shower. It's great that he's being clever and rewriting an executive order, but this fundamentally isn't the way that government should work, right?
Sure.
We are still going 80 to 90% of the federal budget is entitlements, defense spending, et cetera, right? It's great to end the DEI. It's great to end some of the terrible enforcement of these agencies. Is the budget going to actually get balanced? Are we going to actually rein in some of these programs? You got to remember, and again, this isn't me. I don't think Trump was ever going to do this stuff. I want to be clear. But I want a government that's a tenth the size that it is, right? I want a government that's smaller than a tenth the size that it is. I think that that it's great that Trump won. I voted for Trump. I endorsed him heavily. I am encouraged by what's happening, but like, how many like fundamental things are going to ultimately end up fixed here? And that's still a question. Like, already, again, I want to be clear, it's encouraging, but it's important, I think, to remember that ultimately we want these fundamental things to actually be fixed, right? Like, it's like the IRS is white men now instead of like
oh yeah, no, that's
women. Like, well,
that's not progress. Yeah, no, I agree. That's definitely not what I'm looking for. I mean, I think that the reality, basically what I'm saying is, and yes, I am perennially discontented, as all libertarians are. However, I'm just contrasting this to our prior experiences, and it's so, I mean, it's unbelievable. I've genuinely never seen anything like it. I've never had a first 2 weeks of a presidency that made me feel as if there was any hope, and
totally, yeah.
Well, Trump has done a bunch of things that I don't like. He has just done a lot, and like really done it. And I think that's what is most inspiring to me, is that it gives me a chance. But the reason I broke down and I ended up voting for Trump is because proxy wars with nuclear powers, $37 trillion in debt. And it's like, you need dramatic action. You need someone to intercede on behalf of the American people, on behalf of the world, and say, all right, I'm going to negotiate peace here, and I'm going to get our budget in order. It seems as if he has a plan for that, whether or not it actually works out, whether or not, like, and also he's doing everything he can do via executive order. A lot of this, if like you're talking about like real fixes is going to require legislation for much of this. And will he be able to get that passed? I'm doubtful. So,
well, I think a lot of it's a better team in terms of the better stuff that's happening, in terms of reining in spending and all of this stuff. I think that's a better team around him. He always was, even 2016 to 2020, a kind of scary guy to sit across the negotiation table with.
Sure.
Trump representing the country that's actually something I would have always rated him very highly on, in the sense, and not in the sense of everything he necessarily did, but in the sense that this is a guy who he's representing, my people. Would I be intimidated to sit across from this person and have to deal with him? Like, I wouldn't want to deal with him. And there's a sense that you want that, right? You want an asshole.
Sure.
When it's these kinds of, when it's these kinds of situations. And another big point here, I will say, like, I'm against all the spending. I don't want the welfare spending, the entitlement spending, all this stuff. But there is a sense also in which a dollar that is, going to Section 8 housing actually is preferable to a dollar that's going to U.S. aid, which is like literally, trying to achieve the worst things in the world, like the opposite of the direction that I want the world to go in. And here, this is tax money that's being spent to push not just my country, but the world, the opposite of the direction that I want, the world to be going in. So there's a sense in which, like, that is the worst, like, of all the dollars to get cut from the government, this is among the best types of dollars to be getting, cut.
I agree. I mean, it's basically like, I don't know, taking dollars away from the war machine or the IRS or all of the above. I mean, USAID is very bad. For those that aren't familiar, like, USAID, first off, it was created under JFK, and it was basically I guess kind of like a blanket funding system to try and encompass what the CIA wanted to be doing and the State Department wanted to be doing, so there was an overlap, so it would kind of streamline the funding. But I think the thing that people don't talk about, what it really enabled, was for the government to do things that it can't do constitutionally. That, like, you send off funds to NGOs, which all of a sudden are not under the purview of governmental oversight or actual legal rules. And I think that's basically what they did through the COVID censorship era too. Is like, oh well, we're the federal government, we can't censor you. We'll just pressure big tech to do it. And that's kind of what they do with the NGOs through USAID. If it is true, I mean, as of now, just to slow our roll here, as of now, the plan is to roll USAID into the State Department, which then has Marco Rubio running it. That isn't the dramatic improvement I want. I want it abolished, obviously, but
and this is where you have ultimately it's gonna, and it's so unfortunate. I know this is like an anathema to the modern era, but like, we're gonna have to wait and see, right? It's gonna take months or years to see which of this stuff actually happen. I mean, because to do what needs to be done, it it is a substantial task. I want to be clear. It's like it's a like, borderline impossible task. This is another part of the picture I think is so important to remember. Like, I'm not a Zuckerberg defender. I'll make an analogy here. I maybe am compared to some people. It's like when you're the CEO, you don't have the ability to like unilaterally make 10,000 people march, or in this case, 2 million or 3 million people, bureaucrats working for the federal government. Like if 90% of your workforce wants to subvert you, you can't really like achieve, okay, workforce, like do that. Like it takes a long time to get that workforce to turn and reorient. You're gonna have to spend months firing people, making examples of people. Like it's not, like so. And you can see from the posts on our Fed News, on Reddit, and all the posts that are making on the social media, like there is a real entrenched force here that it's going to oppose things. And so, how does that play out? Because the orders won't be enough. The orders are move one. The orders are step one. You've now got 9 steps behind that to actually make sure that this stuff gets seen through, that people aren't subverting you, that the wrong people are leaving, that the right people are getting put into place, and and so on and so forth.
Well, this is actually why I'm so hopeful, is because what you just described was like, well, you have to have a team, you have to have backup that's going to implement what you want, which Trump did not have at all term one. A lot of people were very hesitant or skeptical of Doge, like the Department of Governmental Efficiency. This sounds like this, performative, toothless, nothing burger. Sure, Elon and Vivek are going to be involved, and I like those guys, but it's not going to have teeth. Look, what happened over the past 48 hours was massive. I mean, what Elon was doing was he was just quote tweeting all of the most scandalous stories from USAID. What I think we saw is the teeth of Doge, that he's just going to run a negative PR campaign against any department that he finds that is, spending in an insane fashion. And then he's going to use that as the fuel to get action, to actually see cuts and see reforms. And I think it's going to work. I mean, so far, as you've said many times, this is TBD. It's we'll see.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, Doge is a very serious effort. I don't think I can get in any trouble for talking about this. I was pretty far in the application process. I talked to, I don't want to like name all the names, but I made it pretty far. I'm assuming I didn't get the job at this point, but yeah. I went through, like they had me, they contacted me spontaneously, gave me like 36 hours to prepare a detailed presentation on a randomly assigned government department, and they were looking for people who could deliver very serious, high quality knowledge and recommendations like this. And I think this was part of the problem with Trump. He's a good negotiator. He's a good marketer. He's not really like a details kind of person, I don't think. And right. to dismantle like this, it takes some serious effort and serious detail oriented knowledge. That is, I think, actually much more of the engineering mindset. And this is where, Musk is going to put in a bunch of autistic dudes who are going to obsess over this stuff. And like, it's massive. There's so much there. I mean, I have a bit of this myself. I've spent some of my time, and so I think this is the kind of, they're putting some real people there who are going to really understand these things and try to make real changes. At least that's the hope.
Yeah. But I mean, my point is, it's not just tinkering, like first off, Elon's been very public with, all right, we need to cut $4 billion a day. Like that'll be enough to balance the budget. And he's like, as of this weekend, we are on track for that. That's his claim. This is all TBD, but like, I think he understands that to a certain extent, his reputation is tied to these achievements too, because we are kind of voting for Trump and Elon and Vivek and RFK and Tulsi and Cash, and all of these people kind of all have their reputations tied up into this. And I think that if any of them don't perform, as they're all being tasked with certain subcategories of responsibilities underneath Trump, well, then they're going to be held to account, which Vivek has already bailed on Doge, it seems. But the rest of them are still kind of in their slots. I just think it's a very interesting, it's a revolutionary way of going about governance in America. I've never seen it. I've never seen a president on the campaign trail, negotiate across the aisle, get agreements, and then actually do what they agreed to. I mean, he didn't have to put RFK Jr. into HHS. He didn't have to put Tulsi Gabbard as DNI. He didn't have to free Ross Ulbricht. He didn't have to, like all of these things. The point I'm really want to get across is this is his second term. He doesn't have another presidency. He could have just stiffed all of us. He could have got in there and said, all right, John Bolton, get back in here. Marco Rubio, get back in here. And that's it. Like, I'm giving you no progress whatsoever, but he followed through on all of it. I'm just curious. Why do you think he did?
So my read on Trump is that he's not very ideological. He doesn't have much of a sort of sincere political philosophy. To the extent that he does, it is, it's one, first I should be the best, right? For me personally. But then therefore also everything associated with me is the best, my country, my companies and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And then like, it's a very much, who has helped me and who has been against me. And so he is someone who I think stands by people who have stood by him. He's very sort of loyalty oriented. And so these are people who were loyal to him, right? These are people who worked with him. And I think he's someone who isn't going to betray that. I do think, like, for example, like the pardoning of Ross is substantially, it's kind of an older form of politics, right? This is the way the politics used to work in the, 100 years ago. It's like, okay, faction, like if you deliver your votes, like it's a patronage, kind of a agreement. But I think that's his style. He's a salesman, he's a deal maker, but he wants to honor the deals that he makes. I do think he wants to do that. And so it's as simple as that. Yeah.
But it shocked me. If this was his first presidency, he had re-election, I could understand, him definitely following through. This is
also why. So like, again, I'm not trying to hear. I feel like I'm like partially role playing a pessimist here because I'm actually more of an optimist by disposition. But one way this stuff could kind of go off the rails is, Musk is going to keep pushing for this stuff. I suspect Trump is willing to be unpopular. So I don't mean to say he's not willing to do unpopular things, but it's a different kind of sense. And like, Musk, I think, would be much more bullheaded about cutting things, I think, than Trump. If some of this stuff starts to upset the right people, starts to generate bad optics, starts to upset people who are Trump's friends, right? Again, because Trump is like this a factional allegiance-based guy, and so that would be, I think, where this stuff could also, could kind of go off the roads. And I also think it's got to be at least a bit of a problem for Trump. Like Elon's got to walk a tightrope here, where he's continually like, "You're the president, yes, Mr. President." Like, because Trump's ego is going to get hurt by Musk being, more famous and more successful. Like if too much of the credit is going to Musk and Doge, that's also gonna. This is where Trump turns on his friends, rather, is when his friends, start to outshine him.
Little too much shine there, Elon. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. In fact, we already know that because about, 4 or 6 weeks ago, right after the election, when Elon was very much in the mix, you started to hear the Democrats repeatedly calling him, President Musk, and like it's obvious that they're trying to strike at Trump's ego and get him to shelve him because he doesn't want to be challenged.
It's not a bad strategy, but I don't know if it'll work because it's coming from them. But otherwise, I think it's like not a bad strategy.
Oh no, it's what I would advise. I'd be like, just keep hammering that Trump isn't the president. Just say President Elon. Like it'll absolutely put a wedge between them. Here, what I really want to get into with you is the trade war stuff. I think it's very interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot for weeks now, months, and here's my thesis as to what I think they may be trying to do. And this is not advocacy, this is just my analysis. I think that there's a chance that they are genuinely accepting a multipolar order, that they are most interested in hemispheric domination, that they want to go back to just like, we're going to dominate the Western Hemisphere and we're not going to have anything to do with the Middle East and Asia. And I think that because you're so much in debt that like, if I actually had a president that was interested in solving our fiscal crisis, I'd be like, okay, how do we actually migrate away? And also I'm a protectionist and a nationalist, right? So my thought process would be, we're going to tariff everyone into oblivion. We're going to force them off the US dollar. so that short term it'll strengthen the U.S. dollar, but I think that then you bring industry home, you create tariff barriers that make domestic production, more cost effective and more competitive. Eventually, you migrate away to some sort of like I don't want to say asset-backed currency, but something that gets us away from the U.S. dollar and puts a limit on the government. Like I'm just trying to think of like intermediate to long term. What would these guys be attempting to do? Because I know a lot of people portray Trump's trade war bombast as just that. This is like ego battles. Trudeau talks shit. Sheinbaum in Mexico, she talks shit. We're just going to hammer these people. This is all ego stuff. This seems to have a more concerted plan attached to it. I'm just curious, am I giving him too much credit? What do you think?
Him specifically, I would say probably. I mean, it's possible that that's a plan that some people have. Trump specifically, I mean, I think, first of all, I think he does genuinely dispositionally kind of engage in a sort of mercantilistic, kind of thinking. He sees trade in a somewhat zero-sum way. And we could circle back to if there is anything to that view versus the pure, full, sort of free market libertarian view. But I think that's part of it. I think he loves this stuff. I think he is why he wants to be president. I think he loves the idea of like of negotiating with people and like playing brinksmanship games and like bringing a hammer. And I think a big part of it for him is like he's quite possibly correct, is that you can simply get stuff from other countries by doing this. Like we do have the upper hand in a lot of these negotiations. And like there was a trade war with Mexico. It lasted about I looked up today the shortest war in world history, and Britain won a war in 40 minutes once. It killed 500 people and won a war in 40 minutes. Whoa! So this war went on a little bit longer. Than that.
Wait, I didn't hear the news. So the Mexico trade war is over?
It's over.
Okay.
Am I wrong? Wait, did I get it? Maybe I'm.
No, you update me. I haven't checked.
I thought that like Mexico agreed to put 10,000 troops along the border and and they would. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Then thank you, President Sheinbaum. We're all good.
And so there's a sense in which like Trump can demand this and get this and get these kinds of he likes doing this kind of negotiating. Yeah. And so I would attribute it to at least some of that. And also the prior thinking that I laid out, like there are plenty of Trump supporting factions that want tariffs that also and so like Trump is delivering to a constituency that supported him, during his run for president. So I would think some of it is that, although that theory, look, I would be interested in learning more about, like, I hadn't heard that theory that you gave me about the de-dollarization.
I mean, it's not, I guess it's a theory, but it's just mine. I'm literally just thinking through logically, like, if I had a longer term goal of trying to migrate away, create a little bit more independence as opposed to interdependence with the entire global economy. Let's just get in.
What's the thinking that, like, my perspective is that it's mostly good if other countries use the dollar, so long as we're not, subservient to them in some way, or losing, some form of autonomy. Like, basically, like, not that inflation is good, but when we inflate our currency, we're taxing them, right? Like, they're effectively subsidizing us by holding dollars, is my perspective on
no,
that,
I completely agree.
Okay.
I mean, the whole reason.
What's the idea behind? Why would they want to do this?
Yeah, well, I think that from Trump's perspective and his kind of orbit's perspective is they want industry because they are very concerned about being reliant on other economies all over the world in case of war, in case of trade wars, whatever. That they want to have more industry domestically, like physical production industry. And I think that as long as you're the reserve currency, it's very challenging to do that because you're going to have the most purchasing power from the US dollars as they're printed and borrowed because you have first access via Cantillon effect. So it's very challenging for the labor market to compete because you are the home base. And therefore that is the trade-off, is that essentially the rest of the world, gets to sell to us. but then we also lose out on our industry. And I think that's the trade-off that they're trying to reverse. Do you disagree with their assessment on that?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain about that. I would think that there is a mild sense in which that's true. My sort, and I might be doing some spherical cow economics here, is that you're mostly going to get a roughly equivalent balance of trade. This would not be the reason that U.S. that sort of domestic steel is not competitive with steel from with steel from China or from other places. So
you think it's not competitive just strictly because
I think at the margin, I do think, like, strictly speaking, I think at the margin this is true. So I think at the margin it's a it would help at the margin domestic and some of these domestic industries would would probably get, but I don't think that's the like explanatory factor.
Okay, well, what is the just regulatory and taxation?
And I mean, I don't know specifically what the breakdown of. So if we're talking about like steel specifically, like why is the U.S. not competitive?
Well, I mean, just consider our entire industrial base. It's like we have hemorrhaged that for 50 years. I think that is true. So why? This is not an individual industry. This is a broad-based phenomenon. When it's broad-based, I assume it's currency related. I mean, that's my analysis, but I'm just curious what you think.
Yeah, well, okay, so I mean, the default economic answer right here would be that labor, that it was either labor flowed to higher valued uses, in the U.S., or there were reasons that the same thing could be produced foreign in foreign places for cheaper, which I would assume is like, I would assume labor is the primary cost here, like the raw cost of commodities on the market. Like I assume the market is like fairly efficient. Like maybe there's some economies where you're closer to the right, you should don't have to
sure.
But I would assume. So I would assume, and again, I would assume
the
market
it's labor.
For
right.
for capital equipment and so on is a relatively efficient market. So you're not seeing these big market differences. So I would assume it's that labor is cheaper. But that's part of being a rich country, is that labor here is more valuable. So simply, and this is why of course why immigrants want to come here, right? Like, so even lower, less skilled labor is worth much more in the United States. So this means that it's frequently efficient for us to let people in other countries, at least again, and you can try to find sort of problems with this sort of spherical calc type of analysis, which I mean is like, this is the very theoretical and like perfectly efficient whatever. But I think it's still like, I think this is directionally correct. That it doesn't, that for the like. I think the best argument for anything in the direction of mercantilism or like sort of non-totally free trade is these arguments about externalities that, if it could theoretically, I could see it theoretically being bad for my nation to have like no ability to produce its own weapons, right? In a way that like, I can see theoretical reasons that it might not be good for my nation to not be able to produce any of its own, like I can potentially see some of these where that's a sort of market failure in sort of typical libertarian economic view. I'm not saying I'm convinced by that, but I can like see the argument. I think to the extent that manufacturing is not in the US, I don't think you're bringing it back with, you could look, you set a high enough tariff, of course you could bring it back, but I don't think that makes Americans better off to do that.
Well, I think short term it doesn't. I think long term it might. Like here's my concern, and this is unpopular thought processing amongst libertarian audiences, but you and I both don't seem to care about saying things that upset libertarians. We do it all the time. I am concerned about opportunities for young people in this country, and I think that like there's a lot of downsides to being the reserve currency. Like there's a lot of upsides. Like you get to have a debt that's explosive. You get to print and borrow into oblivion. You get to basically conquer the world for a time. But the downside is that like ultimately you end up having housing be too expensive for the younger generation, and then they end up kind of rudderless and left adrift. And then you end up in World War III, and that's how you kind of reset everything. And that's what I felt like we were on the brink of, which is ultimately why I voted for Trump. But anyways, I am concerned about, because of globalization. I mean, do you feel that there's enough opportunity for young people? You're a father, you've got a lot of kids. Do you think that there's enough opportunity? Well, your kids are very special because they're homeschooled and probably awesome. But like broadly speaking, I am concerned about the amount of opportunities for young people in America, like domestic labor. And I think that libertarians oftentimes are, I mean, not just dismissive, but like they genuinely are abrasive if you even bring up, like, why do you care about American labor? We just fucking open the borders and you let immigrants work, whoever's cheapest. That's all that matters. I think it is a problem that we have to concern ourselves with. I do.
Yeah, well, look, there's a version of libertarianism that I'm not, although I have some appreciation for. That's like you're very much your number go up maximalism. Like it's not. It's very close to like sort of neoliberalism. I mean, to me, libertarianism is a system of property rights and agreement that lets people build all kinds of different things. So you can value whatever you want under libertarianism, and if you want to value your various things or want a society structured a certain way, like libertarianism allows you. It's a system that actually allows for diversity and competition. You're sort of at the societal level, right. And so I don't. I often don't see libertarianism as like taking these strong stances on some of these issues that other people seem to say that it does. I am absolutely concerned about that kind of thing. To the extent that I have concerns about a class of people beyond my immediate concerns, and of course the Free Staters here in New Hampshire is certainly one of my circles of concern. But I care about these things. It's a direction. It's the thing I care about in society quite a bit. I'm skeptical of the specific claim that this is highly coupled to America as a reserve, currency specifically. But I think it would be really interesting to talk. Like I find that area of discussion like really interesting. What is causing these? The whole Chipotle debate and what kind of jobs should be available to these kinds of people. I think a lot of it is who's the guy has that elite theory? Is that like Turchin? Like this idea that like basically, and it explains all the woke stuff too, but from the other side, like there's all of these people who sort of have these aspirations to sort of be, elites in society, and there aren't enough, positions, right? Like the complaint about, and I'm not saying this is an unfair complaint, but like the complaint about the Chipotle thing is like these people are supposed to have a higher position in society, right? It's all right, you're making money, you have a place to live, you're not desperate, but like the complaint is they're supposed to have more, not that it's like an objectively terrible life, right? The complaint is that there was supposed to be something that was, that there was something that was, supposed to be more. And I don't know, this like what is bringing manufacturing to the United States back? Like, who are these people? Is this the 100? This is like, we're talking about like jobs for the average American, the below average American? Like who is the class of person that,
I'll just give you my answer. My concern is the kind of the middle, not the exceptional, not the H-1B guy, but the middle, the 95 to 105 IQ guy that may go to high school or may graduate high school, but may get his associate's degree. Like in the past, there was a period in American history where you could be that guy and have a family. It's very tough to be that guy and have a family these days. Like it's just very challenging because of inflation, because of the printing press. And you're right. I mean, as reserve currency, theoretically, we don't have to be such profligate spenders and inflate and make our lifestyles so much more expensive year after year, but we have. And now what? And I think that's my concern, is that those guys, the middle guy, is kind of left out.
Yeah, I mean, I this is why I think that part of this has to hinge a little bit on like that they feel that there's a feeling that there was like a higher position in society, because my impression is that you can, as one of these people, like get a job in any number of, in any number of trades, any number of things where you can be making enough money to afford a house and have a family, even a single earner family. I think this is possible in a lot of places in America, for people to do this. And I'm not trying to defend the status quo, because I agree that inflation has been a problem, and I agree that there have been, a lot of problems. I think that there are directionally, like, there's a problem here. But I think that it's kind of like this whole thing about, like,
You think it's overstated?
It's a desire to go back to, like, a different set of values and a different sort of structure of society. And in that time, it's like, there also happen to be manufacturing jobs. Like, it's a form of cargo cultism, it would be a way of putting it. Like this isn't the thing. Like, it's not the manufacturing jobs specifically. And to say, like, we need to bring those back and tariffs will bring. I think that's. I'm not saying it's out of. Like, there's something that might be coming from that's like a correct feeling, but I think that it's tariffs and then we'll bring back manufacturing jobs. And I think it's incorrect, and I think it won't work.
You think it's the wrong answer? Look, I'm not saying that, like, we have to bring back auto manufacturing. I think many of these jobs, if not most, are going to be totally replaced by AI and automation. I mean, many of them already have been. So, like, this is a problem that is only going to get worse. I think that in some sense it is performative. It is demonstrating concern for these people, because everyone has basically shit on them and not listened to their concerns. And Trump is like the first guy that goes, "Yeah, I hear you. Here's the answer." And maybe it isn't the answer. So I'm not claiming that it is. When I opened up with my kind of thesis as to what I think they may be doing, I was just trying to give a guess as to what the game plan might be long term. But I don't know. I mean, it could just be all dick measuring contests and ego battles and nothing. There's nothing more behind it. I don't know.
Never underestimate how many substantial things in world history happened because it was just either a dick measuring contest or a fight over a girl. All right, so, like,
absolutely. Health insurance is confusing, expensive, and frustrating. Claim denials are becoming more and more common. In fact, 1 in 5 Obamacare claims were denied last year. That's unacceptable. The headache of health insurance is exactly why Crowd Health was created. Would you like the freedom to choose a different path? Well, you have one now. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. So stop sending money to big insurance companies who profit off of not paying your bills and check out Crowd Health. Welcome to Crowd Health, the health insurance alternative. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using code LOCKDOwn at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code LOCKDOwn. Yeah, people are like, no, World War was to establish central bank, and World War II was to do this and that. It's like, maybe it's just because they're a bunch of asshole, powerful guys who think that they're better than everybody, and then one of them took off their glove and slapped the other in the face at a wedding or whatever.
Don't underestimate how much of stuff. This is my actual theory of world history.
Then I would like to get kind of your thesis as to so. If the AI and automation pathway is probable, and I think it is, I think it's assured. Honestly, what is your answer for kind of, because I'm 100% not a UBI libertarian. I think that's an atrocity. What do you think is going to fill the void? And I know this is kind of like asking you to guess what comes after the horse and buggy, and it's like, who the fuck knows? But do you have any like optimism as to, can we actually replace all those jobs?
It's gonna be very interesting. I do think that jobs performed by humans will be some of the last things to go. Like, there are things that we want people to do, and even in a world that's very wealthy, I think it will remain like a status symbol for humans to do them. So not endorsing that life or that outcome, but I think it's a likely outcome. I mean, so we're talking about the scenario here, and AI really does work, not just for knowledge work, but also it's able to manifest itself in the real world. So we're able to construct robots, so you can have intelligent humanoid robots. There's an idea here that like this would be basically a massive return to capital, right? That labor effectively becomes very, very cheap in this world. And so if you're spherical cow economic here, right, you've got capital can all of a sudden get way more stuff, right? So physical stuff gets cheaper. Things in the real world get way cheaper. It would make our lives a lot different. It would probably cause an incredible amount of political turmoil. How will humans derive, I think this idea that we'll ever be sort of post-labor, I think is kind of fake. So I don't think that will necessarily, like, this isn't going to necessarily happen. Of course, like there's lots of outcomes where AI just becomes a force multiplier, like other kinds of technology, and so simply becomes like, look, we have just as many people, doing the similar jobs, but a lot of them are just leveraging AI, to more of a degree. So it's unpredictable. It certainly could trigger another communist revolution. I think it's like possible.
I mean, so this is why I get frustrated with libertarians that do dismiss, domestic employment concerns, and they just go like, whatever, like figure it the fuck out. And it's like, all right, yeah, but if you don't, then people oftentimes will, burn everything down. And like communist revolutions do happen from time to time. And guess what? That's not very good for property rights, libertarians. So you might want to concern yourself with that. And that's kind of where I'm at. Is I am very nervous about particularly young men in this country. And I've talked about this a few times, like, because there was this movement to really lay at their feet all of the ills of civilization, particularly straight white men. It was like, you fucking son of a bitch, your fucking great grandfather did XYZ, and therefore you are beyond redemption. And it was just such an evil way of treating people, like no more or less evil than how you would treat black people in the early 1900s or 1800s. It was atrocious what they were doing to young white men. And then on top of that, you have this inflationary wave that makes it so that you can't outpace the success of your father. It's very rare these days, because like all you had to do was buy a house in 1980 and you were a millionaire by the 2000s, and like that's just not an option for a lot of young people. And I can sense in you that you don't want to give that much credence to the fact that like the younger generations have it harder than
no, the housing one's real. The housing one's real. I've been meaning to do, I actually have half started, because I do these like effort threads on X sometimes, and I have one that I've been working on, because I'm in trouble, because I want to understand, because like I think that it's just so easy to fall into these narratives, and sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not. And I think one of the things I notice all the time in politics is you get these like clouds of beliefs that it's like clearly like people just join a tribe and then they adopt all these adjacent beliefs. And I've always been like a bit heterodox, and I try to like look at things, independently rather than just be, the cloud guy. And so I end up,
you're more than a bit heterodox, brother.
and I'm sure I get it wrong sometimes. Like I'm not, but no, housing is more expensive. Like this one's real. Like this one's real.
Dude, housing is insanely more expensive. Insane.
At the margin, does immigration help with it? It does not.
No.
But
and libertarians usually just tell people to shove it up their ass if you bring that up. They go, there's no fucking evidence that housing is yes, bullshit.
Right.
More there's more demand.
A huge part of it is that we don't allow more building to happen, though. Like we have to really like acknowledge that this is that this is a huge part of it.
I was a developer. I know better than the libertarians that bitch about regulations. Regulations are a nightmare in real estate development.
Well, and I will say this is another part of it when I was doing that someone actually only taught me this in the last couple of weeks. There is a decent argument that some portion of the increased housing costs is that people simply expect more house and expect more housing. Like if you look at a graph of construction costs per square foot, like if you they've certainly grown beyond like what we would expect, but construction costs per square foot haven't grown nearly as much as square feet of houses. So houses have actually gotten way bigger now, than they used to be. And so it's possible. One of the things that's interesting is like humans don't actually tend to work that, like, humans will work less up to a point. If humans who have, like, a lot of humans will just continue to work and spend more money on status symbols. They'll buy fancier cars, they'll buy bigger houses, because they see themselves as in these, maybe not incorrectly, as in these your status competition games with their peers and society, you know, around them. And so I think, like, there is and again, this relates to what is this housing thing actually about? Like, right, people don't want to go back to the 1950s house, you know, with so they want to go back to the 1950s in terms of where they were in society, but they don't want to actually go back to the way, I don't think, that people lived in the 1950s. Like, if you look at what a starter home looked like in early 1900s America, like, again, I don't think these are the houses that people are actually asking for, you know, for the most part.
Yeah, well, I mean, the housing is much better today. Like, I'll grant that. There's arguments as to quality, which some people say that the older stuff was made a little bit better. I don't have a firm opinion on that. I think a lot of it's just preferences. Like, what do you want to invest your money in? Do you want to have the new tech gadgets, or do you want to have the best masonry? And some people, you know, a lot of people, there's differences in preferences. But as a lifelong, you know, real estate investor and spectator of the market, I know for a fact that, like, the cost of production of real estate has gone up a lot. And now, granted, the past 4 years was a huge part of that because of the lockdowns, and that was catastrophic. But even before that,
we've got all these men who need better jobs. To me, building, construction, contracting, like, these are pretty decent. These are very respectable professions. You're building.
I completely agree.
People.
Completely agree. But
what's going wrong? Why can't a bunch of these people? We build a bunch of houses. There's more houses for everybody. We're going to need the houses because they're going to start having kids again. Like, why can't we get this going?
The answer is labor costs. Because you can do it with illegal immigration.
But they're the labor. Okay.
I mean, that's the answer. Real. You walk onto any job site in America in construction, you're going to see probably half the guys are illegal.
Okay, and look, I'm very sympathetic to this. Is one, like, I'm not, the kind of libertarian that's like, you know, illegals are heroes. Like, we're in competition. You know, it's a kind of, there is a sense in which that's unfair. They're not contributing, you know, to society and you know, and so on. I do still encourage libertarians to illegally move to New Hampshire, but you have to donate all the money you don't pay in taxes to help create. I
love it.
I don't know. So yeah, no, I think that one's totally fair. And your libertarianism should not entail this form of what I would consider far leftism, which is where you think, like, a stranger in China has the same, you know, you have the same ethical obligation to them and so on as your neighbors and your countrymen, right? I think this is totally ridiculous. And there's nothing in the philosophy that should suggest that, you know, we have to believe that.
Yeah, no, you and I tend to agree on these things more than I guess this is what makes us, you know, right-leaning libertarians, is the concentric circles, you know, philosophy of the world. But I think it's just obviously logical and rational that you ought to concern yourself more with your neighbor's issues than, you know, the war in Ukraine. Like, it's obvious to me that, like, what matters most to the survival of my family and my friends and my network is the local environment more than the foreign. But for whatever reason, some libertarians, I guess the left ones, they don't see it that way. They see anyone starving anywhere on earth is just as important as my own child starving. It's like, what?
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's fucking crazy. But anyways, that's my thought process on it. But do you have any deep dive threads that you're working on? So you said that you're trying to work on the housing.
I want to do one on housing. Yeah, okay. I want to. Well, because I want to get to the bottom. Like, again, like, and this is where maybe I'm probably broadly in that sort of right. I'm in the right wing cluster, but where I do break probably the most often is, like, I think some, like the sort of directionally spherical cow market arguments are often, like, that. I agree they can sometimes be missing a piece, but it doesn't make them wrong, you know. And I think that often that it's hard to think correctly about economics. It's not intuitive. Okay. And I think, like, but it doesn't make it wrong, right? Like, there's things, you know, and we actually can't just, like, as much as I like vibe checks and so on, but like, we can't just gut our way through everything. Like there do need to be times where we step back and think about things cerebrally.
Yeah, I think
the
the reason I'm so interested in thinking these things through is that we are in the position of being the reserve currency of the world, and the global economy rests on our decision making. Like it does. And does that mean that we have to sacrifice ourselves to keep them alive? No, that's not what I'm saying. But like, it's super important that you get this right. Like this wind down of US dollar as reserve currency, which is inevitable. Not to say that it's imminent, but it is inevitable at some point. Like, do you want to be in front of that? Do you want to be a victim of it? Do you want to just have it happen as a consequence of debts that get untenable, and then you have either a hyperinflation or a default outright? Like, I think that there's real reason to be thinking these things through, like thoughtfully, because lest you end up in a world war or something, catastrophic. Do you have any concerns about that, or do you not spend any of your time on it?
I'm not too much of a doomer. I'm like a things will maybe get a little things will maybe get a little bit better.
It'll work its
maybe
way
a little
out.
bit worse. They won't change that much. But I don't know. It's like they still could. Things change. The thing is, when things change suddenly, it's often very unpredictable that it was going to happen. It looks predictable in hindsight, but it often wasn't. And so I'm not someone who believes that history is over. So I think we will still see big changes, and big shakeups. I think the AI stuff is by far going to be the most interesting thing to play out politically and economically.
This is a perfect way to end it then, because you people that aren't super familiar with you may not know that you're big tech background. What is your expectation as to what do you have any opinion as to the threshold by which it maximizes? Like, do you think that this has the potential to actually replace artists and movie production and just obliterate all human endeavors? It sounds as if you don't think so, but is it possible?
Yeah, yes and no. I think things are going to change tremendously. I think that the idea that I think it's fairly likely that humans will still end up being in the loop for for a long time. I think things will plateau. And probably already kind of are plateauing this a little bit more than people think. So my understanding of it, I attempted to kind of go through and get a better understanding of how it all worked from a technical perspective. I mean, this stuff is new. Like I did get a college degree in computer science back in the day, but is much different then. I'm old now. But I did try to go through. I read some of the old papers and tried to get up to speed. And I think the core thing is it's effectively, you can almost reduce it down to there's a shockingly simple, well, not simple. You can reduce it. The insight. It's two things. It's like, how much compute power are you throwing at the LLM that you're creating, and then what's the size, what's the body of work that you're training it on. And part of why it's slowing down is they've got it all. This is these agents have already been trained on most of the internet and all available text that they can find. Yeah. This is also why they're so good at, I don't know if you've used them for this, but they're shockingly good at understanding laws and all this political stuff. They understand an incredible amount, and that's because they were able to suck down a bunch of bodies of text, about all of this. So I think it will plateau a little bit because I don't think there's a ton more out there. But what it can already do is so impressive that it's going to take that simply fine tuning it and the time it's going to take to propagate into all of these corners of our society and all of these areas of our society. I mean, my kids talk to a computer in normal human language. It's this was mind boggling that this would be, possible, 5 years ago. And yeah. I mean, it is remarkable. I will also say at the same time how normal it feels, right? Because I use this stuff all the time, and it feels like it's already it worked its way into my head, and I'm like, oh, the AI, it's it becomes a part of you, a tool, right? We're good at integrating tools. This is part of what's sort of special about being human. It just feels normal now that AI exists, but it's going to keep eating into all these various sectors of the economy, and it's going to go for a lot of things. we're going to have to see how it plays out. I mean, the optimist case is it becomes a tool that everyone can use, and it allows people to force multiply and gets rid of things that people didn't have to do. So that would be that. And we kind of talked about the downside before. So, it's going to be the biggest thing to change the world, I think, in the coming decade or two.
I totally agree. I mean, I think this is why I'm concerning myself more with the plight of the midwit American, where I'm like, what are we going to do about these people? And I care about them. Like I know a lot of them. It's like I want to make sure that everybody is able to contribute to society and have.
Okay. That's I don't know how much more time, but because I think that's a really good question, because it gets back to like these sort of more fundamental philosophical questions. People are getting less religious. What does it mean to lead a good life? What's the purpose of being here at all? Not to sound like like college stuff or whatever, but like, hey, these are kinds of the questions that it comes back to, because are we saying, because I'm not saying that you're saying this, but like, could it be would it really be an implication that if we could invent a technology that simply like made work much less necessary, that we should say no, just so we can continue to what? What are these people, and what would they say if you ask them who's these people whose jobs you're trying to protect? So like, and I think that like people won't also, not that I trust like Sam Altman of all people, but this idea that like even if there's massive returns to capital, like I don't think like billionaires are going to start like eating people for sport or like hosting like Hunger Games. Like I think that I'm optimistic about the future. I think like it can be a little bit like nerve-wracking, but like generally like the internet was great. Like the internal combustion engine was great. Like technological innovation, like they've generally, it's very, very rare that we've regretted them. And I understand that this is like one that should make us nervous, and like rightfully so. I'm not trying to paint too rosy of a picture, but like I think we should have baseline optimism that this will like ultimately make things better, because it's a really powerful tool. It's a cool tool for anyone who's used it. And so rather than being fearful, like I think we should generally, it's better to like approach that from a place of optimism, not like reckless confidence, but from a place of like,
No, I mean, ultimately, I think I am optimistic. It's just that in the interim, I'm like, ooh, it's going to get rocky. Anyways, Jeremy, go ahead and tell people where they can follow you.
I'm approaching 2,000 followers on x.com/Jeremy Kaufman.
200,000 followers.
I'm 200,000.
Yeah, you said 2,000. You passed that along.
Yeah, I think I'm technically racing you to beat Reason, although you're going to crush me. So, but I could use charity follows, please. If you follow Clint, I need charity follows. Okay, I've got to beat him. And then I'm very active in the New Hampshire libertarian movement. Libertarians are winning in New Hampshire. So, if you think Trump's not going far enough, New Hampshire might be the place for you. So come on out to PorkFest this summer, or any of the Free State Project events. It's we're taking over the government here in New Hampshire, and we're gonna drown it in the bathtub. So
I'm about to hop on the Tom Woods show. You want me to ask Tom if you could join us?
I don't. If he wants me on, I'm happy to come on. I feel like he normally does one-on-ones, but yeah, I'm around.
Okay, yeah. Let me ask him. I'll get back to you in like 1 minute, right?
All right.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it